Welcome to another episode of Pilots Say What, where we get to hear what pilots have to say. And my name is Zach. I'll be your host once more this week. If you've been, checking in with us every week, then you already know me. This week we do have Hayden as our guest. We've had Hayden once before. It's been a while though, so
Sure
I'm a little
has.
excited to talk to you about some of the things you're experiencing now versus maybe the last time we talked. But also, I'm excited to kind of get into what makes you tick because I've met you a couple times over
Right.
there, more than a couple times over there at the school. So just know that you can expect to get into some technical things, learn a little bit more about Hayden and why he's a CFI and what he's enjoying about his training so far. But without any further ado, if you wouldn't mind giving us a brief introduction, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, my name's Hayden Hayes. I'm a CFI here at Thrust, and I have been since November of last year.
Hmm.
Um, I kind of started my aviation career, or I say career, it's now a career, which is
Yeah,
crazy.
right.
As a CFI, I've started aviation kind of back in 2022, 2023. I've told my story before, so just as a brief kind of recap on that, my mentor Roland Welsh
Hmm.
really helped me push me through my private training. We did Part 61 for that, and he really just had a huge influence on how I think and how I roll with aviation. And he helped me start my first training in Part 61. I ended up switching schools to another Part 61 to finish up my private. And then shortly after that, I finished my private on my birthday in September of 23.
Hmm.
And then I found Thrust in November, or I started Thrust in November of 23,
Hmm.
and kind of went through all of my ratings, all the rest of the ratings, all the
And
way through my multi.
you mentioned your birthday. Were you 18? Were you training young?
I was actually turning 20. Let's see. I was turning 22 on that birthday. So I
Okay.
was 21, kind of training and everything, and then turned 22.
You started training at one Part 61 school and you finished at another. Is there any reason for that?
Yeah, the reason being, Roland, he actually started helping me. He's an airline guy.
Hmm.
He's pretty busy with the airlines, right?
Yeah.
And so coming through kind of March and April and May, it's a very windy time of year. A lot of thunderstorms coming through, all different kinds of things. And I was working full time at the time uh, as a supervisor at Home Depot, so I didn't have any consistency in my schedule, right?
Yeah.
And as an airline guy, neither did he. So
Mm,
we stopped matching, like our days just never lined up. And whenever
okay.
they did line up, it was a windy day, it was too windy to go up, or maybe there's a thunderstorm rolling through and then we had to cancel the flight. So we ended up at another Part 61 who had some more availability. They had a few more airplanes,
Hmm.
not a ton at the moment, or at the time, and they had better instructor availability, so it worked a little bit better with my days off.
You're in Part 61, you choose that for a reason, but then at some point, there's a reason for you to say, okay, I'm going to start Part 141 and I choose Thrust. What is that like?
Absolutely. So Part 61, it was great for what I needed at the time.
Hmm.
I was paying myself through my private. I had very inconsistent days off. I was trying to work full time while pursuing my private pilot certificate, and in doing so, I could only fly a couple days a week,
Yeah.
a couple times a month. There were some months I look back in my logbook and I flew 5 times in a month. Right.
Mm,
Um, Unfortunately, that is the longer way to go about getting some of your training, right?
yeah.
You fly inconsistently, you get a little bit here and there. You have to recap on those training lessons and everything. And I kind of developed my own routine with studying, and I wasn't sure it was the right kind of routine, you
Right.
know. So I started whenever I was finished with my private, I started looking at some of the 141 options
Hmm.
because everything you hear about is, hey, there's a structure here, they have their own syllabus, they have X, Y, and Z. And to me, it sounded a little bit more attractive for what I wanted to do because, one, I really wanted to get done. I really wanted to get through and start my career.
Right.
Once I had done my private, it was kind of proof to myself that,
Mm.
hey, I can do this and that I want to do this. And that's whenever I started looking for the 141s.
I think I've noticed that a lot of people who have started at Part 61, it was kind of like that buffer, a test run. Um, I feel like if you can do Part 140, I'm sorry, if you can do Part 61, you're probably pretty set up pretty well for Part 141 because it's a completely different ball game. But I almost feel like there's like more resources and structure, and if you can succeed it without it, I feel like with it, you're probably more likely to. I don't know if that's the case or not.
I tend to agree on that
Yeah.
portion. Now looking back on it, if I could have, or if I just convinced myself to go 141 from the beginning, I probably would have been done a lot faster.
Mm,
But you're exactly right. The Part 61 life is kind of like a trial error, or
yeah.
trial run
Hmm.
for your private pilot license or private pilot certificate. Uh, for me, it was kind of proof to myself that, hey, I do have the drive, I do have the
Right.
capacity, I can do this, and that is the case for a lot of people.
Hmm.
Uh, there are great 61 programs out there. There are some that are not so great.
Right.
Um, so whenever it comes to the 61 life, it is somewhat of a trial run, and it's not as structured. We don't have like a lesson plan necessarily for, hey, what do we need to get done,
Hmm.
X, Y, and Z. Besides kind of going through some regs, maybe the CFI has their own lesson plans that they're
Right.
like, hey, these are the things I want to cover. Um, but for the most part, the 61 life is a little more inconsistent, right?
Yeah.
But you're right. If you can survive the 61, you could absolutely survive the 141.
Thank you for sharing that. I wanted to ask you, what is if if you're meeting someone and you want to know that they understand you, what is one thing they need to know about you to kind of get you?
To kind of get me,
Hmm.
ooh, I can be very kind of, what's, how do I want to say
Put you
this?
on the spot. I know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Don't know.
One thing to kind of get me, I mean business whenever it comes to aviation,
Hmm.
but also I'm very goofy and silly on the other side.
Yeah.
I like to make things fun. I like
Yeah.
to make things fun because it's memorable. It's something that I see a lot of success with. Um, then be able to flip a switch.
Mm,
We're talking serious, right?
right.
The way that I like to teach people, it's really understanding the why.
Hmm.
Really understand the why.
Mm,
If you have a question on something, I will follow up on it, right? One thing to know about me, though, outside of that, is that love aviation. I love airplanes.
hmm.
I'm that kid who looks at the sky and is like, "Oh, what is that?" I have
Yeah.
no idea. I
Mm.
also love old trucks. I love old trucks. I'm
Yeah.
looking at getting one, hopefully soon.
I would like an old truck. I always tell my girlfriend, I'm like, man, I miss when they had the seat that was all one seat, like a
Oh yeah.
bench seat.
Hmm.
It was really cool. I want one. I want to. I wouldn't mind a classic old truck as a little project one day, but I'm not worried about that these days. So,
One day,
yeah,
I'm
one
telling
day.
you, mark my words. One
Yeah,
day.
I believe you. It sounds like you allow yourself to be curious enough to kind of want to know the why. I'm always that person that asks what probably more questions than people want asked. I
Yeah.
want to know like every little like cause and effect in a situation or like in something that I'm learning. So
Right.
I can be that way. Sometimes obsessively. So I don't
I
know if
agree.
that's to a fault.
I
But
agree.
yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. With aviation, though, it seems like that's part of what makes people succeed. It's the willingness to go down the rabbit hole and learn as much as possible. For you, is this? Do you feel like this is your main thing that you're doing in life?
Honestly, absolutely. Like, yes, I do other things outside of this, but aviation is truly a passion.
Hmm.
It's truly a passion. I find myself, after maybe 6 to 8 hours up here of teaching, looking at airplanes, flying the same thing, I still go home and I'm like, it's a good day to go fly, right? And trying to rely on some connections or something, be like, hey guys, what are you doing?
Right.
Let's trying to go out to the airport. I also take pictures of airplanes. Like I find
Oh
myself
yeah.
just surrounding myself with aviation,
Yeah.
at all times. At
Yeah.
all times.
What benefit do you think you get out of being so involved in aviation rather than just kind of casually?
So one thing that really stands out is, and what I live by here, and it's that your network is your net worth,
Hmm.
right? What I mean by that is the more people you know here in aviation, the more opportunities you're going to have. Granted, they may not pay off right away.
Hmm.
And it's not even that you need to go into the mindset with that they pay off. It's more of a mindset of what can I do for this person
Hmm.
and building very strong relationships with those people. So,
Hmm.
network is your net worth. What I found is that I've had some really incredible experiences just by being myself, just by talking with people and telling them, hey, this is what I'm doing, this is what I've done.
Right.
That's landed me a ride in a King Air before. That's landed me um, uh, about 5 hours of tail wheel time in a Cessna
Mm.
185. It's pays off in so many different ways, just to be involved in aviation. and just knowing people.
Have you ever played Catan?
I haven't. I've seen it though. I know
Okay.
what it is.
Well, Catan's a fun game, but it's kind of like Monopoly, but more like colonist stuff.
Right.
But what's cool about it is that it's all about resources. That's what they're called, like the
Yeah.
little things that you have to get. It's called resources, and I've thought about that a lot after playing that game a lot with my friends when we went through a phase. And life is just kind of that way, like
Yeah.
all about resources. And I think that, like you said, your network and things that like maybe things they have access to or things they might know. I mean, that's all a resource. And you wouldn't want to deprive yourself of such a thing, especially in a
Mhm.
community like that aviation has. That's what I would imagine.
Absolutely.
So when you say that, I feel like I can understand it. Like you said, 5 hours in a Cessna. I mean, that goes on. You can put that in your logbook, right?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. Not only does it reward you in terms of maybe a cool experience, right?
mm,
But I can't tell you how many times I've had just an issue where I'm like, I don't know how to teach this person.
right,
I don't know how I need to go about this.
right,
And I call my mentor, or I call somebody who I know is a CFI or has had like gone through these kinds of issues and everything, and I'm able to talk with them, and it rewards me with somebody else's experience. You know what I mean? Being able to rely on that experience to maybe use in my teaching.
Okay, well, let me ask you a bit about where you're at in your training and in as a CFI. So you're a
Yeah.
CFI. Let us know maybe how long you've been a CFI and what it is that you primarily work on with students.
Yeah, so I've been a CFI at Thrust now 6 months. I got my actual CFII in October of 24.
Hmm.
I started Thrust at the very beginning of November of 24, and mostly that or what I've taught has been a lot of private applicants,
Right.
instrument applicants, CFII applicants, and now I have CFIs. What I'm looking at right now, that's next, is my Gold Seal CFI. Actually,
Okay.
this requires at least a 8 out of 10 pass rate, or 80% of your first time applicants pass on their first try. I'm sitting right now 8 for 8 of my applicants. I'm 100% on my pass rate.
Awesome.
I very shortly have 2 more applicants who are about to be ready to go, and that'll bring me eligible for Gold Seal. So my next cert, or my next certification, is going to be my IGI. It's just
Mhm.
an instrument ground instructor, where I have to take a written test and get a score, and then have a DP essentially process that for me. That's pretty much what's very like right up next in my training. I finished my multi back in January.
Mhm.
So if I were to pursue anything else, it would be a couple endorsements, and maybe another certificate like the single engine C. I've been kind of interested in that.
Yeah.
There's a place up in Denton that does some seaplane stuff, which is really cool. Um, and then as far as like endorsements go, I've actually been looking at my tail wheel recently.
Mm.
And you want to talk about a challenge? That
Yeah.
tail wheel is a challenge.
Well, I'll ask you more about the tail wheel, but before then, even what sort of is the reason or the why behind even thinking about getting endorsements, AGI, even back to the Gold Seal? What kind of pushes you to want to do those next steps for some of those things? Because those sound like not fully necessary, but I'm curious about that.
Yeah, they're not necessary. Like they're not fully necessary for just an airline applicant, right? However, it really helps to keep your brain in a place of, hey, I'm still learning, right? As a CFI, it can become really repetitive.
Hmm.
Day to day, you're doing the same stuff, training with the same people, training the same things, right? It can be really repetitive, and you get stuck in this loop of, all right, let's go fly, eat, sleep. All right, go fly, eat, sleep, right?
Yeah.
And really, as a CFI, what you should be doing is pursuing knowledge, right?
Yeah.
You're teaching all your applicants, and you could be teaching something wrong, but how do you know?
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So it's a constant pursuit of something new, right?
Hmm.
It, it's a constant pursuit of not being complacent, right?
Hmm.
Because complacency is what kills pilots,
Mm.
truth be told. So pursuing a new rating or pursuing endorsements, it's not only challenging, makes you grow as a person, makes you understand more airplanes, right?
Mm.
That translates over into students and being able to teach them in different kinds of ways. Because what I've really found out with being a CFI is not everybody learns the same. Not at all. There are different methods, there are different things, there are different scenarios that people learn from. And it's all about understanding more, experiencing more, and understanding more, and being able to translate that into teaching, in my eyes.
Yeah. So what I hear though is like it keeps you sharp, right? And
Keeps you sharp.
and you're purely interested in doing it. I think what you're saying to me is just furthering the point that like you can't just get into aviation with some sort of end goal that doesn't have some sort of intrinsic value to yourself, such as like passion or interest at very least, or like a pursuit of novelty or whatever it might be.
Right.
Because I think the only reason someone goes for something like what you're saying, something that is like, oh, this will make me better, oh, this is interesting to know how to do, oh, this will help me know more. The only reason that people go for those things, it seems like, is for one of those intrinsic like motivations.
Right.
And that's what I hear, I guess. So one thing I wanted to follow up on though is I want to hear a little bit more about the tail wheel.
Oh man, so
like what's with this tail wheel? Explain this to me first of all.
so tail wheel, right? You've seen your archers, our classic archers. We've got tricycle gear. We've got 2 mains. We got one on the nose, right? So tail wheel, we're taking that nose wheel, we're moving the mains a little bit forward, taking the nose wheel, sticking it on the back. And you would think that doesn't have much of an effect on what you're doing, right?
Right.
Except that everything is different. Truth be told, everything is different. So we have this thing called CG, right? Or our center of gravity.
Yeah.
In our tricycle gear airplanes, they're in front of the mains and in front and behind the nose, so it's really in this nice little triangle, right? Well, that CG basically pulls those mains forward. Right?
Okay.
So like a trailer, right?
Yeah.
Whenever you're taking the trailer, makes it really stable on the ground. It's very nice, right?
Yeah.
With a tail wheel, we're now kind of moving the position where that gear is, and now that CG is behind those mains.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried to push a trailer or maybe push something forward and all it wants to do is go off to the left or to the right?
Yeah.
It's exactly what a tail wheel wants to do. It always wants to loop around so that the center of gravity is in forward of those mains.
Yeah.
So you have to learn how to taxi different.
It's kind of like a wagon, pushing a wagon backwards, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So you try to push it backwards and you kind of have to make small adjustments, or if you've ever backed up a trailer before, somebody who we've all heard stories of the boat ramp, right? Where they're pushing the trailer back and it takes 20 tries to try and push it back, right?
Exactly.
It's the exact same thing with the tail wheel, except now you are really having to use your feet. You use the rudders a lot more, you use the brakes a lot more, and you really have to take, wind correction into account.
Right.
So it changes. It's a simple, small change, but it changes everything with how you operate on the ground, everything with how you operate on taxi, takeoff, and landing.
What are some of the technical things that go into, learning how to maneuver a plane on the ground with a tail wheel rather than like our Piper? What are some of the technical things that you've learned from that so far?
So,
are you aware? Did you start it already?
I have started already. I haven't finished quite yet.
Okay.
But with that said, technical wise, or something that's really just totally different is definitely taxiing, right?
Yeah.
In the Archer, it's pretty forgiving on the ground.
Yeah.
Right. You want to go to the left and you go full left rudder, and you maybe tap the brakes to make the turn sharper, and then it kind of straightens itself out and you're good.
Yeah.
In a tail wheel, my experience, it was a pretty windy day. I was full left rudder, trying to go to the left, and the airplane was still going to the right. So what's totally different is that you really have to operate those brakes. Not only is it a convention, or trying to convince yourself with rudder usage, you have to tap the brakes to really maintain the center line. And it's a beautiful little dance. Okay. Yeah. I'm not very good at
it. Not my strong suit.
Not my strong suit. So we're trying, you have to use your feet 100 times more in a tail wheel than you do in an Archer or in a tricycle gear.
Gotcha. Well, it sounds like that's a challenge you're taking upon yourself, and I'll ask you again. What are you gonna get out of that you think is that you just know you're gonna like value?
So in terms of value, right? It's experience, right? Everything all comes back to experience. Eventually down the road, I do intend on being a CFI and maintaining my CFI through my airline career. I do have an opportunity, hopefully here in a couple years, where I might be teaching as a tailwheel instructor.
Mm.
Tailwheel flying is just a whole different ball game, right?
Yeah.
We're really here. We're here training for a purpose. We're doing everything, to a syllabus and everything.
Mm.
Tailwheel flying is freeing. It feels like you're a sky cowboy, to be quite honest, right? You can go into a old grass strip or something, and not saying that you can't do that in an Archer or anything, but it just something about it's way different.
It's like a Civic and a Cadillac or something.
Yeah,
I don't
right,
know if that's right
exactly.
or wrong, but maybe not. But continue.
So in terms of tailwheel flying, it's really just something that I got a taste of it, and it just stuck with me.
Yeah.
Kind of like the first time I went flying.
Yeah.
Right. The first time I went flying, I was like, "This is incredible. How do I do this?"
Mm-hmm.
I got a little taste of a tailwheel after I've known how to fly. I'm like, "This is incredible. How do I do this?" Right.
Yeah.
It's just something that was really interesting. It's something that maybe I could look forward to down the line. But also, it's making me a little bit better with my feet, a little bit better on my rudder usage.
Yeah.
In a tailwheel, you really have to use your feet.
Yeah.
So what's really interesting is
taking off, I can only imagine the difference there too.
Yeah. Everything's all about center line, right? And trying to take off on center line and all that. But you have to use your feet a little bit more in that tailwheel. You kind of dancing, right?
Yeah.
You should be dancing in an Archer, but it usually tracks pretty well. A tailwheel, you kind of concerned more with where your tail's at, because your mains are kind of just next to each other. They're kind of going back and forth, right? But it's gonna help me sharpen my skills with my rudders. And that's really the biggest thing that I've seen.
Someone could argue that you are, like, let's say someone would argue that, oh, this isn't a big enough payoff to invest your time and energy into, or money even. What would you say to them?
You just don't like flying. Not exactly. I think
I think
it's
answer,
very
personally.
I think it's something that if you see value in, like, go for it. If you don't see value in it, why are you there? You're not going to enjoy it, right? And that's just the difference between it. In the end, flight time is flight time, right? Whether you want to be in an Archer or in a Cessna for your 1500 to get to the airlines, or you want to maybe have some experience in a tailwheel, or experience in a high performance, or experience in a complex. It's up to you, right? It's all how you want to go about everything. And truth be told, I mean, the more experiences you have, the better pilot you are, right? So it's just one of those things that maybe it doesn't have value in your everyday, day-to-day routine. It has value as a pilot.
I guess there's interesting situations where people would argue that the result isn't tangible enough, and that's why they don't go for things. And to me, I think that's kind of like that sounds like something that would work against you in the long run. To think that something like, if someone were to argue you and say, "Oh, there's not enough of a tangible or beneficial result there to do what you're saying," I feel like that would be like something that will hold someone back. In my own opinion, there's been times where I've like wanted to do something, and someone will say, "Oh, but why?" And it's hard for me to explain the why, but I know the why, and maybe I'll say it like it was something you've said. So, yeah.
Well, let's put it into something that's not necessarily aviation terms, right? Let's bring up this old truck, right? It's an old truck. It's not new. It doesn't get fuel efficiency. It's old. Why would you drive it?
Right.
Because I like it. You know what I mean? Like, that's because I want to, right? And that's another thing is, why would you work on your own car? Will it save you money in the long run? Maybe, right?
Right.
It's all about experience. It's all about getting that new experience and just experiencing something new.
Right. That makes sense to me. And that, I guess for me, there's always hidden value there that you discover. And you can't always perceive what's to come. Sometimes you just got to figure it out. And your intuition of what you want to do is good enough to get you there.
And for a lot of people, it might just be becoming humble again, right? Kind of a reality check.
I like that. It's like touch grass.
Yeah, right. So especially whenever you talk about pilots who are at the kind of hours that I'm at, crossing about 500 hours. I'm a little past that now. They, in all the studies, this is the most dangerous area. From what I've seen, what I've been told, that 300 to 500 hours range, you've experienced enough to know that you know how to fly an airplane. You think you know everything.
Yeah.
Right? You think you know how to do X, Y, and Z. And tail wheel is kind of a reality check. It's like, oh, I don't know everything. Right?
That's nice.
It's one of those things that really put into perspective that, okay, hang on. Like, I will become a better pilot from this because I'm not good at this right now. Kind of another example of that is you haven't experienced everything, right? Especially around this hour mark. So a lot of people haven't experienced any kind of emergency. They haven't experienced something where they had to think on their toes, right?
Right.
Most recently for me, I had an alternator failure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
how was that?
That was it was a good experience. It was something where we had a bit of an alternator failure. It showed the message. I was in IMC. And we got a burning electrical smell in the cabin, and it was something I had to take over and think on my toes. Hey, what am I going to do? Right.
Yeah.
Had to descend into visual conditions. I got off of my IFR flight plan. We landed uneventfully after we shut off some of the switches and everything after running the checklist, right? But it was one of those things that really proved to me that, hey, maybe this is for me. Because you know what? The next day I was back in an airplane.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
yeah, that's awesome.
It's just all about experiences.
Is there any maneuver that you really just get a lot out of teaching?
I absolutely love steep turns.
Yeah.
Steep turns. I don't know what it is about them. They feel fun. Like they're not fun with the backseater in the back.
Yeah.
But for the guys up front, it really is something that demonstrates a lot of things with the aircraft. One, trading that vertical component of lift for horizontal component of lift. Really bringing that aircraft around in a steep turn. You feel the G's and what's needed to maintain level flight. Not, claiming any titles here, Sean Brown, but I am the king of steep turns, and I will claim that. I teach this in two ways. One with trim, one without trim. And I found that with new pilots, without trim actually helps them more than with trim. Reason being is you're really demonstrating how much force and how much pressure it takes to keep this airplane up, to keep it at an altitude. Not only that, I really love the fact that everybody gets locked in the G1000.
Yeah.
They're chasing a number. There's 4 standards here, right? Bank angle, airspeed, altitude, and then making sure that we, stay coordinated, right? Using your feet. What I love about it is whenever they get into a steep turn, I start to see them locked into this G1000. They're chasing a number. They're up, they're down, they're up, they're down again, right? They're not controlling where the nose is. The nose is everything here. So you know what I do?
Cover it up.
I turn it off.
Oh yeah.
We have a little dimmer switch. And you go to the dimmest setting. It's still on technically, but you can barely see it. So now they're like, "What am I doing?" Well, it forces you to look outside. Looking outside's everything. We fly VFR, visual flight rules, right? Visual. What does that mean? Use your eyeballs, right? So in steep turns, it's really interesting because you have a screw that's basically right in front of you on our panel. And this is what I use as my reference and what I tell everybody. I'm like, okay, I want you guys bank over into 45 degrees. Put that screw on the horizon. And you know what? It's magic. I've had CFI candidates just transition to the right side. Can't do steep turns for the life of them. It's like, I was just able to do this. It just passed my commercial check ride. Why can't I do this again? I'm like, what are you looking at? They're locked in the G1000. So I turn it off and say, do it again. They go left, they go right, perfectly within standards the entire time.
Is that common that that switches like that easily for them when you make them look outside the plane?
A lot of times. And it's because you can recognize whenever you're forced to look outside, you can actually see, where am I going? Am I going up? Am I going down? I know what straight and level looks like, even if I'm in a 45, 50 degree turn.
Right. And there's an aspect of feeling, right? And I hear people talk about VFR versus IFR and how you need to feel what you're flying, right?
Right.
And in combination with what you see. But I think a lot of times when we turn on the logic side of our brain that wants to look at, I say we, but and I'm
Yeah.
imagining in this situation, right? You turn on the logic side of your brain that looks at the G1000 or looks at even a six pack maybe, and you're like intellectualizing it. You're trying to think through it,
Hmm.
and you're like, get this number there, get that number there, and mathematically that all makes sense. You're supposed to be able to do that, right?
Right.
um I think we underestimate the way things look and the way things feel and what those do for the natural human instincts.
Right.
And I think you can apply that in every area of life. I mean, even on our phone, right? Like even in my job, or I mean, someone who's in marketing, you can sit there and say, oh, I need to get this number there, this number there, and this number there. But what does that do to what you're marketing with? Like
Right.
sometimes you just got to feel it out.
Sometimes you do. What I will say to that is that seeing is basically 70% of it, right? I think this shows, like, there have been times. There's a guy that's online. He does milkshakes, and he'll be like, "Guess this milkshake." I'm sure you guys probably have seen this, but it's a guy. He's got a green milkshake, and he goes, "If you guess the flavor, it's free." So many of those people taste this milkshake. They're like, "Oh, I know this. It's strawberry. Oh no, it's raspberry." Or maybe it's chocolate and somebody says it's banana, right?
Yeah,
You take the side out of it and you're like, oh wait, what is all this, right?
yeah.
And that's exactly what it is in the airplane, right?
Hmm.
You lock into this G1000, you're like, oh yeah, that looks right, and I'm starting to see this number increase, and now I got to do something, and I'm really changing everything, right?
Yeah,
Whereas if you were to look outside and you see what's happening, you're like, oh yeah, that's a steep turn. I'm keeping my flight level here. I'm
yeah,
keeping my altitude, right?
yeah,
And seeing is everything. It
yeah.
really is. Even with smells, right? Smells. If you're smelling a candle, you're like, "What is this?" And then you see that it's like orange. You're like, "Oh yeah, it's pumpkin."
Gives you another insight. Yeah.
Right.
Well, we have five senses for a reason, but
Right.
yeah, that makes sense. That's a good way to put it too, and I like how you're talking about steep turns, how it kind of forces you to enter that mindset of using like your eyes, and like you said, dimming the. I've heard people say things about covering up the G1000 with a clipboard or something, but
Yeah.
turning the dimmer down sounds effective in the Texas heat and sun. So, um, we're opening up in Phoenix. Are you visiting Phoenix at all? I bring that up because it's hot out there.
It is hot out there. I'm not sure I'm gonna find myself out there. I
Yeah,
wouldn't be opposed though.
yeah.
They say it's a dry heat, so.
Yeah, so it's very different. I'm sure you can feel it too in that sky.
Oh yeah.
Um, what would that look like? Is that would that be an option for cross country solos, or that's not far enough? Is it?
It's far enough.
Okay.
And it might actually be a little too far from at
Oh,
least Addison.
okay.
Um, it could be something, because a lot of times, like for those cross country solos, we end up at like Lubbock.
Oh, I thought we were going further than that. Yeah, never
We
mind.
end up Lubbock, Lake Charles,
Mhm.
something along those lines.
Okay, gotcha. I might need a ride to Lubbock, by the way. My dad lives up there. We talked about steep turns being one of your favorite maneuvers to teach, and you said a little bit about why, but I'm curious about, is there anything in that maneuver that you feel like translates really well to the rest of flying?
To the rest of flying, yeah, absolutely. It's
Hmm.
control of your nose,
Hmm.
and I see that all the time. If you understand where your nose is going in steep turns,
Yeah.
you will understand your traffic pattern better, right? A lot of times, what I see, especially with new privates, they're ground shy. What that means is, we're on downwind, pull our power back. We got to get down to the runway, right?
Right.
I even see this with my CFIs.
Yeah.
We got to get down to that runway. Well, you got to control the nose. You put that nose down to the horizon.
Right.
That's all it takes. Just put it down to the horizon.
Yeah.
What I tell my students, I'm like, I want you to fly with no hands. Okay.
Yeah.
What we do is we pull that power back, no hands. If the airplane's trimmed out, that nose will naturally come down. They put one notch of flaps in, they're magically on their airspeed. It's perfect. It's
Yeah.
wonderful. What I find with steep turns is if they don't have an understanding of where that nose is, a lot of times whenever they start turning base, that nose starts to come up. That's dangerous. Why is that dangerous? Whenever your nose comes up, low power, we're losing airspeed,
Mm.
right? Unfortunately, this is a place in the traffic pattern, that turn from downwind to base or that turn from base to final. It's a very dangerous place if that's the tendency. Reason
Because you can
being,
lose the angle of attack or something like that,
your
right? Too.
angle of attack becomes greater,
Okay. Okay. There
actually.
we go.
And because of that, you get closer to your critical angle of attack, right? And if you're uncoordinated, if your students aren't using their feet, if you end up stalling, you can get into a spin stall, right? And at that point, you're really close to the ground. You'd be lucky to survive. So it's really imperative that they know where that nose is going, right? How can they control that nose? And that's why I find with students in private, teaching them steep turns without trim really helps them understand how to get this nose to do what they want it to, right? Because the whole idea is that we keep that nose right in what I call the pocket. It's about 2.5 to 5 degrees nose up above the horizon. And if you're not maintaining and pivoting around where that nose is, you're not going to have a level altitude. This translates again to the traffic pattern, right? You let the nose come down to the horizon. Well, if you let it dip, you're not going to be on your airspeed, so you're going to speed up. If you let it come up, you're going to lose your airspeed. Now we're getting into a dangerous scenario, right?
Yeah.
So it kind of comes in play in that case, and really just in controllability of the aircraft.
I realize how much of a technique it is to fly, how much of a skill skill it is, and I think that there's a lot of fundamentals there. Yeah. And I like to ask people about those, and that's one of those for sure. Like you're saying, like how to control your nose, and people talk about trim, people talk about rudder usage. I can't remember what on our last episode we talked about a really good one too, but I'm getting a little more into that, so that's good to know.
Yeah, it's all about that foundation, right? That foundation you build on, and truth be told, you can do most anything. You can fly any airplane with pitch and power.
Yeah,
if you can pitch and you can power, you can fly any airplane.
You can make it happen.
You can make it happen.
Okay. Oh, I'll remember that then. Yeah. I'm going to learn a little bit about pitch and power. Okay, so I want to ask you for some tips or advice. What is something that you wish every student knew before starting flight training, or maybe even yourself?
Oh, man. And even this is said a lot of the time, but I really don't think it's understood. You're going to have struggles, right? You're going to reach what we call a plateau. It's going to happen. Whether or not you deal with that in a good manner or a bad manner is what's going to make you successful or not, right? You're going to have some kind of struggle where you just can't do it, right? Maybe it's that you can't hold pattern altitude. Maybe it's that you don't know where this nose is going. You can't control that nose.
Right.
Maybe it's that you don't understand, why we do the things that we do in terms of checklists or, full power for a stall recovery, right?
Right.
And that will translate into maybe motor skills, right? Where you're like, I don't know what I'm doing, right? We call that a plateau. Yeah. Where you essentially, we could try and practice it and practice it and practice it and practice it, and you're not going to get any better.
Okay.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Whether it's in private, instrument, commercial, CFI, double I, multi, any of it, right?
Right.
It's going to happen. You're going to struggle. It's going to happen, right?
Do you have any examples of that from yourself?
Yeah, myself.
Sorry to cut you off, but yeah.
No, that's good. For me, one of those things was holding traffic pattern altitude. I could never figure it out. One of those things, another one of those things was getting down to the runway and figuring out ground effect, right?
Yeah.
What is this ground effect that we talk about? How do we?
I hear that one's a little elusive, that concept.
It can be, and it's because we can't see it. We're taught this. It's a concept, and we're like, well, it's all in the feel, right? Have you ever tried to fly an airplane? It's all in the feel, right?
Yeah.
What am I feeling? I don't know what I'm feeling. If you don't have somebody who can really explain it or show it, right? You're never going to have a good understanding of it. You can plateau at that. Another one for me recently, taxiing the tail wheel. Yes. I could not, for the life of me, get to maintain center line on the taxiway, and I'm not used to that, right?
For these things, sorry, I'm cutting you off, but I guess what I'm curious, a great follow-up would be here is on any of these things, what happened to help you move past it?
What happened was I had some kind of experience or some kind of breakthrough, right? Where all of a sudden it clicked, right? It was that moment of like, oh, this is what I need to do. Ground effect, right? I had a couple low approaches where we put the power in, we get down into the ground effect, and if you put the power in while you're in ground effect just to maintain straight and level flight, this airplane, if you try to force it down, you can really feel that it resists going down to the runway. Now, we don't want to like force it down, right? But you want to feel kind of where that line is, what that looks like, and memorizing that sight picture, right? A lot of it's about sight picture, a lot about just seeing what you're seeing, right? For pattern, right? It was understanding that I need to get ahead of the airplane, right?
Mm,
Power comes back to where I need it to be in the pattern. I don't need it to be full power, right? But we
right.
just go full power to in a climb to get up to pattern altitude. Now we get to pull it back, and now I can be on my airspeed. But what did I tell you earlier? Pitch and power,
Yeah.
right? It's not just power, it's pitch too. So whenever you pull the power back, you can raise the nose, and now all of a sudden I'm maintaining straight and level flight at a certain airspeed.
Mm-hmm.
This translates from slow flight. Really does. Slow
Right.
flight, descending in slow flight, and really understanding portions of that maneuver really helps you in that traffic pattern. All of these maneuvers really do. Taxiing the tail wheel, man, still working on it.
Yeah, I got you. There you go. And like you said, it's how you handle those plateaus. You would consider those examples of plateaus.
Mhm.
Like I have my own perception about what you're saying, right? About, what's helping you get through those. Um, what would you say is the behaviors there that are helping you kind of push through those?
Really just staying motivated, right? It can be very, very, very easy to just lose your motivation.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I don't know that I can do this, right?
Yeah.
I can't hold my traffic pattern altitude. Is flying really for me?
Mm-hmm.
I just told you I love flying, right?
Right.
I'm gonna struggle through this. I'm not perfect. I'm
Yeah.
not Chuck Yeager, right? So knowing these struggles, knowing what my end goal is, maybe doing some of these side quests, right? The tail wheel, the high performance, the complex, getting all these other endorsements, maybe a single engine C add-on, right? Being able to maybe translate some of these skills into other types of flying, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's really what's going to help. It maybe seeing another perspective. That's why I love backseating, right? I love whenever another CFI, another trusted CFI comes in and can teach one of my students, or maybe they get backseating on one of their flights, right?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe this guy explains it in just a different manner, and you're
Right.
like, that's what they needed for it to click.
You mentioned the backseat flying, kind of seeing a different perspective.
Mhm.
You mentioned even like slow flying, slow flight, kind of playing a role in how you get to see what happens in ground effect. I think that's what you were mentioning, and then you
Mhm.
also mentioned, oh, at one point you had to realize it's not just power, it's pitch. All those things are just like kind of like nuances, and maybe not for everyone, but at least for you,
Yeah.
it took a second for you to like you said, you have to have the motivation and the drive to make you do the thing, and when you do the thing, you kind of like get to uncover something. You're like, oh, I didn't think about that. And it
Right.
takes either someone saying it, someone doing it, you experiencing it, whether it be in a different area or somewhere else. And I think that's where it gets really, I think that's the nitty gritty.
Yeah.
I think that's what it takes. Because even as a creative, right, I have to put myself in a situation to learn something before I can
Yeah.
like learn it, and it's going to translate elsewhere. So yeah, it sounds like you're willing to put yourself in a situation to discover nuances. I think
Yeah.
even just getting a perspective from other people can be that. It's nice to, like you said, have a backseat. Like I've done that in creative scenarios where I'm like, I just want to see how they work. I need to
Yeah.
see their process, right? Because, oh, why would they make that decision? I would have never thought to make that decision.
Right.
That can open a door to like maybe like something that could just cure everything. Um, I guess I just find that very interesting about flying being such a technical thing, and it's very different than a lot of things I do. But it's cool to hear people talk about it in the way that I would maybe about other things I do.
Absolutely.
So
And that's really the key, is really searching for another perspective, right?
yeah,
Or another experience or something else, right?
right.
Because obviously if you reach a plateau, right, you're losing motivation. I can be here as a CFI. I can really try to push you and get your motivation up. That's my job,
Yeah,
right? But having that self-awareness and being able to drive yourself to, hey, maybe I just need to experience this in a different way, and
right.
being vocal about that, right? How am I supposed to know if this isn't
Mm,
working for you? One of my favorite students will straight up look at me and be like, I'm not learning what you're saying right now.
that's great.
You know what I mean? And I'm like, fantastic. Write a note down about it, talk about it on the ground or something like that. Because what's happening right now, being vocal about it, like it's so easy to get caught up in your head and just block out whatever instructor's saying or whatever's experiencing, right? It's so easy to get there and you're like, what was he saying? What?
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know?
And I like that because when I would say something like that in a situation because I want to understand something. I want to know all the little, I want to understand why cause and effect, like we were talking about
Mhm.
earlier. And if someone's saying something, I'm like, I don't get it. I don't get your point. I'll
Right.
say that. But usually then they'll just say it differently. I'm like, oh, okay, I get it now.
Yep.
But it's easy to sit there and feel maybe embarrassed, not say that, or think, oh, it'll make
Yeah,
sense later and write it off, or you know what I mean? But like pushing is important. It just takes a lot of trust, I think, to be able to say that to someone.
it does.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, hey, maybe one of my last questions I would like to ask you about is maybe that. We have a bit of a community here at Thrust, and I think a lot of schools do. And I think that when I talk to different pilots, whether they've gone to different schools or they're at Thrust, um, trust itself seems to play a role. And I say trust because it's like, how can you interact with your instructors or your peers?
Right.
Um, what kind of role does that play for you and where you're at and what you see with students?
Trust is everything.
Mhm.
It truly is.
Mhm.
And that's why, whenever I said earlier, I mean business whenever it comes to aviation. If I come out and I'm just like business, 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 whatever, is a student really going to look at me and be like, that's a fun instructor? Like, am I going to learn much from him? No. I come out, I'm fun to fly with. I love flying. I love
Yeah.
steep turns, right? Sometimes I sing to my students. They get a personal concert. Promise. It's a fantastic idea. Um, so keeping things fun helps to build that trust.
Mm,
Being able to talk with them, not just as an instructor, but as a person, right? Helps to build trust. If a student doesn't trust you, they're not going to learn from you.
mm,
If you don't trust somebody, you're not going to talk to them. You're not
mm,
going to open up to them. You're not going to be able to be on that kind of level with them, right?
mm,
Trust is everything.
mm.
Doesn't just go for a student to instructor relationship. What about a student to flight school relationship, right? What about a
Right.
flight school to instructor relationship?
Yeah.
All these different things. I mean, all of it is all around trust.
Yeah.
Trust, trust, trust. I mean, let's be real here. We're flying some dangerous machines, right?
Yeah.
Up in the sky,
Yeah.
hoping we don't hit anything or anyone or the ground, right?
Yeah.
Um, it
Absolutely.
takes an immense amount of trust to let an instructor and a student take that airplane up together, right?
I think about that.
Takes an amount of trust for an instructor to not take the controls from the student to let them mess up, right? If they're messing up, or maybe it's a fantastic landing, right?
Right.
All about trust and relationships.
Yeah. And on that note, I'd like to say that thank you for joining us again. We've
Yeah,
talked to you once, at least once before. I've talked to you a handful of times already.
yeah,
But I think it was great to kind of get into some of the things that help people push past those plateaus and even like getting into the trust part at the end. I really think that's important for people to understand because this isn't you don't check boxes here. Yeah, you got a lot of checklists, but to get into aviation, I mean, you're entering a new world, and we've talked a lot about that
hmm
in other episodes. So thanks again, Hayden, for coming through and
absolutely.
joining us on another episode of Pilot Say What, where we get to hear what pilots have to say. And I think you've contributed a lot to this one. If you guys are still listening, though, I mean, I'm imagining that means you're at least somewhat interested in aviation, and maybe that's because you're just a fan. Maybe you like planes. Maybe you like the conversation, or maybe you're thinking about becoming a student pilot. Maybe you've already started flight training. I'm not sure. Just know there's a lot of resources out there for you. I hope that our channel can be one of those. If you've not started flight training, everyone talks about it. If you haven't seen any of our other episodes, just know everyone talks about a discovery flight. Call up your local flight school. I say local because there's a lot of them. There might be one really close to you. Just Google it. Now, if Thrust is there, we do discovery flights as well, of course. We'd love to answer any of your questions, as I hope any flight school would. So look into it, take that first step, and see if it's something that you're enjoying. Otherwise, if you're a student, we have so much educational content on this channel. We post twice weekly. Hit that subscribe button, really helps us out. And if you guys have any questions, or maybe you want to share any of your stories, we have the comment section below for that. Stays pretty active. Otherwise, we'll see you guys on the next episode of Pilot Say What. Thank you for tuning in.